Our biggest fear has always been that having a disability would become an acceptable reason for state-provided suicide. Bill C-7 is our worst nightmare. Inclusion Canada stands united with all national disabled persons organizations in calling for MAID to be restricted to the end of life. The disability community is appalled that Bill C-7 would allow people with a disability to have their lives ended when they are suffering but not dying. This is not how we respond to the suffering of any other group of Canadians, much less any other charter-protected group.
This bill has introduced many alarming changes to MAID, medical assistance in dying, by removing vital safeguards while not giving enough time to fix many of its problems. My disabled patients already feel disempowered and looked down upon by society, and this bill reinforces these issues, implying that their lives are not worth living or saving. This legislation works towards suicide assistance rather than suicide prevention for the disabled and chronically ill. Changes need to be made to this bill. It should strive to find alternatives to suicide and apply the standard of medical and psychiatric care that all Canadians deserve. It should have safeguards to protect the most vulnerable in our society. But the deadline set for this legislation is unreasonable and has left little time for changes and for proper consultation of affected groups.
Bill C-7 begs the question, why us? Why only us? Why only people whose bodies are altered or painful or in decline? Why not everyone who lives outside the margins of a decent life? Why not everyone who decides that their quality of life is in the ditch? Surely the answer rises up in all of our throats. That's not who we are. We dial 911. We pull you back from the ledge. And yes, we restrain you in your moment of crisis. Autonomy be damned. We will get to the heart of the problem that drove you out into the woods, and we will beckon you back toward a life that is bearable. Unless your suffering is medical or disability related, then and only then there will be a special pathway to assisted death.
Given the concerns raised here, it is understandable and eminently reasonable that many physicians and nurses object to participate in the provision of euthanasia in general and to those with disabilities in particular. Contrary to the claims of some, objecting to euthanasia is not motivated by selfish concern for personal moral sensibilities, but rather by a profound moral concern to uphold the value of the patient and to maintain high-quality medical care.
A study by Carol Gill of the University of Illinois at Chicago shows that doctors often perceive disabled people's quality of life to be significantly worse than disabled people's own views. Whether disabled or not, Canadians look to these professionals as guides. Doctors have power to shape others' perspectives, and they should wield it with great care.
The current safeguards that are being that are considered to be removed, I think they're very good ones, and they were considered essential just a few years ago, and now we're considering removing them. And to my mind, I don't think there is a difficulty in accessing MAID. There's a difficulty in accessing palliative care. If anything, that's something we should be focusing on a whole lot more. I mean, there's a dearth of palliative care.
What is happening to vulnerable persons in Canada is so wrong. Assisted dying is easier to access than safe and appropriate disability supports to live. Committee members, you cannot let this happen to me and others. You have turned your back on disabled and elderly Canadians. You or your family and friends will all be in my shoes one day. You cannot let this sliding regime continue.
Bill C-7 will enshrine a lethal form of ableism into Canadian law by making medical assistance in dying a legally sanctioned substitute for the provision of community-based supports to assist people with disabilities to live. The Council of Canadians with Disabilities, along with the entire disability rights community in Canada, is therefore pleading with policymakers to rethink and revise Bill C-7 in light of the reality of systemic ableism. You must ensure that MAID does not weaponize systemic ableism in Canada.
People with disabilities have been historically devalued and marginalized in Canada, and that remains to be sufficiently remedied. Bill C-7 further devalues the lives of people with disabilities and fundamentally changes made from physician-assisted dying near the end of life to physician-assisted suicide on the basis of disabilities. The lives of people with disabilities are as necessary to the integrity of the human family as any other dimension of humanity, and this threat to the lives of people with disabilities is a threat to us all.